Okay, we are recording finally. I just did 5 minutes of video without actually recording any. So we're going to make this payroll application today. And there are a lot of objects on the form for this one. So I'm just going to bring up my properties window for a second and bring this dialog box down. So here you can see all the items that are involved. We got a group box, 2 radio buttons, 3 labels, 2 text boxes, and a button. I will go ahead and insert a screenshot of what everything is named. You can also pause the video here and see all the names as well. But I went ahead and did. So we're going to basically make this program that is going to calculate our pay based on a couple factors. So how many hours we worked, the hourly rate, and whether or not we're going to be paying some taxes. This program is also going to account for overtime pay, which is any hours worked over 40 hours in a week get paid at 1.5 times more. So our program is going to account for that as well. So we're going to go ahead and double click our calculate pay button to insert a click event for that. And I'm just going to lay down some pseudocode to help guide my thinking. So this is a good habit that I think you should do, no matter how experienced you are. It's not a bad idea to just have a rough outline of what you're doing. So we're just going to say declare variables for hours, pay, rate, etc. And then we're going to go ahead and calculate the gross pay, accounting for overtime. That's hours worked over 40, and that's going to be at 1.5 times the rate. And after that, we're going to see whether or not we need to deduct any taxes. So we'll be looking at those radio buttons. The radio buttons. And then we can finally display our answer. So that would be a rough outline. And you can go back and you can add things to this as you think about a problem, but just having something down on paper is really going to help you out. So let's go ahead and declare our variables. So the first one, if I just think about my design view, is I believe I have the hours. So I'm going to go hours as double because you might work 9.5 hours. And we can go ahead and grab the value from the text box hours, and it'll be the text property. And then we're going to need a rate as well. So that's also going to be a double. And that's going to be the value again from txt rate.text. So you can really see how having good names just speeds up the whole process. Because there's a lot of things on that form and I don't remember them. We're also going to need a variable to store our answer, so I'm going to call that gross pay, and it's going to have to be a double because everything else is a double, and we'll just go ahead and initialize it to 0.0 just as a good habit. I don't think we'll need any other variables, but if we do, we can just come back up here and declare them. So now let's go ahead and calculate the gross pay. So this is going to be some sort of conditional control structure because I have to account for overtime. So the way I see it is if your hours are less than or equal to 40, then, well, we don't need to worry about overtime. So calculate, hours times rate, no overtime. So we're just going to say our gross pay is going to become the hours times the rate, and there's nothing else to it. That's it. Now, for the else if, this is if we are going to have overtime hours. So I'm going to say, well, if the hours are greater than 40, then what's going to happen? So this is where we, need to worry about overtime pay, right? So basically, we know they've worked more than 40 hours. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to say, well, the gross pay is going to be 40 times the rate, right? We know they worked in excess of 40 hours, so we're guaranteed that this is going to be true, right? They worked at least 40 hours, and they're going to get that times their rate. Now, for the actual overtime calculation, what we're going to do is we're going to take our gross pay, take our gross pay, and we're going to make it become what it already is. So gross pay becomes gross pay plus, well, we need to calculate those hours in excess of 40. Okay, so we're going to take the hours they worked, we're going to subtract 40 from it, and that would be how many overtime hours we have. Then we're going to multiply that by the rate, and it's overtime hours, so it gets multiplied by 1.5, and that would be our overtime calculation. So just to quickly review, we go and calculate their gross pay again. We know they have at least 40 hours, and that's going to be times the rate. And then this calculation is going to take what we just calculated and tack on the overtime hours. That's probably the hardest part of this. So once you have that, we need to see whether or not to deduct taxes. So if we quickly go back to the design view, if we click yes, I think the exercise says to deduct 18%, so they'll get taxed at 18%. And if they click no, we're just going to have a message box that pops up and says no taxes deducted or something like that. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's going to be another if statement. What's interesting about this one is I can look at the value of the checked property here. So just a reminder, you want to actually, I don't think I did this, but select both of those radio buttons, and we want to make sure that neither of them are checked to begin with. So if you go find the checked property, it's a little neat trick you can do here is you can have them both selected, select true, and then select false. And now when we run this thing, neither of them are going to be selected by default. So really quickly here, go computer, neither of them are selected. Otherwise, VB is going to by default have one of them selected, and that's not going to be good. Let's go ahead and do another if statement. So we can actually look at the value of the checked property. Because it's true or false, it's going to satisfy a requirement of having a Boolean condition in our if statement. So we can say if rad yes is checked, then, this is only going to execute if it's true. So if it's true and we are exempt from taxes, we're just going to say message box.show, and we're going to say no taxes deducted, yay, something like that. And we're going to have an else if, and we're going to say if rad no is checked, then that means we need to deduct taxes. So now, there's a lot of ways you can do this. I think the easiest way to tackle it is to just work with percentages. So if we deduct 18% taxes, this means we have 82% of our pay left over, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to calculate what is 82% of my gross pay, and that would be the same thing as calculating 18% of the pay and then subtracting it, which just seems like a lot of work. So I'm going to take my gross pay, and it's going to become whatever it is right now, but times 0.82. There we go. So that takes care of the taxes problem, and then we get to the easiest part of our program is just displaying our answer. So we got LBL gross wages, and we're going to take the text property of that, and we're just going to make it say gross wages. And then I'm going to use the string concatenation character. That's the ampersand sign. So that allows me to tack on, say, a variable or something like that. So I'm going to tack on my gross pay. But I'm going to show you another neat little trick. If you want to format it to have a dollar sign and all this stuff, we can go gross pay to string, and then in quotation marks put C. So this is going to, this is a command for VB that is going to round it to 2 decimals and insert a dollar sign. So it'll be a function, it's calling a function, and when it sees that, it's going to know exactly what to do. So here it is, let's run it, and we'll try a couple examples here. So the first one I'm just going to try with no overtime. So I'm going to go 40 hours and 12.25, and we're going to do that we are exempt from taxes, and I'm going to hit calculate pay. So let's hope for the best. So it says no taxes deducted, which is good. And then we see that it's now formatted with a dollar sign and 2 decimal places. And I pre-calculated that one, and that works. That's the correct answer. Now we'll do another one, maybe at $12.30. Or let's make it easier. Let's do $10, and we'll do 45 hours. So let's just see, being exempt from taxes, whether or not we're going to get our overtime pay here correct. So there it is. So normally you'd get $50 for 5 hours, but it's 1.5 times more. So 75 plus the original 400 is 475. So that's working. And then let's just try and see if it works when I hit exempt from taxes. And yep, that number checks out. So there it is. Hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. And feel free to pause the video at any time and like and subscribe. Bye-bye.